Welcome back to Blood, Sweat, and Gear. I'm Scott McNally, and with me, as always, is Skip Hill, joining me live for the apocalypse. What's going on, man? How you doing?
This is my Dickie Bennett impersonation.
Who the hell is Dickie Bennett?
Justified. I don't have anything to do until the 27th of May because the third season of Ozark comes out on the 27th, and I can't stand it. So I went back because my wife has not seen Justified.
I never saw it either.
Oh, God, it's fucking great. It's in my top 3. Anyway, she had never seen it. So I'm like, we got a little bit of time. Let's watch. I'm like, just watch a couple. Because she's like, well, I watched some episodes with you while I didn't really like it. I'm like, you didn't watch it from the beginning. And I keep hitting my fucking head on this microphone. So I told her, I said, you got to watch. So now she's hooked too. So Justified, Raylan Givens, Timothy Oliphant. To me, I always tell him, like, I want to be Raylan Givens. He's the coolest motherfucker. And then he went and did Santa Clarita Diet with Drew Barrymore. Bad. It's out of his wheelhouse. That's why it only lasted 3. It's hard to watch him try to crack jokes and be funny because it's just not there. But he's a bona fide badass.
We have a lot of time to watch TV shows right now. We also we could binge watch shit. We all could binge watch shit right now, couldn't we?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's not much going on. Are you okay with my glasses? Do I need to?
Yeah, keep them on. They look good, man. Right. I'm not seeing any kind of glare today. Maybe it's the combo with a hat or something, or I don't know.
I think it's the lack of S2H. He's just it's just a glare component there. So
I want to start out by giving a shout out to Lawrence and Karim and Lewis, all joining us live here, and it looks like we have some more people that are with us, guys. If you want a shout out, go ahead and chime in. Skip, how long are we going to record this thing for? What do you think we're looking at here for starters? Maybe 20-ish?
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. Oh, okay, yeah. We're going to keep it shorter, but here's our thought. So, guys, we recorded Blood, Sweat, and Gear this past Sunday. That was right on the helm of the apocalypse, I would say. And by Monday, everything changed. And it's been like, let's face it, things have been changing rapidly. And Skip and I, we didn't feel like this, like it was as appropriate today as it was Sunday. So we thought, what we're going to do, when you guys, if anybody's watching this on the recorded version, we've got a good handful of people watching us live right now. Anybody who's watching the recorded version, though, what we decided to do was cut out our initial part about the coronavirus and all of that. Although I did say some fun stuff about the Arnold Classic, because man, I had a blast there. But we wanted to redo this because it felt almost to me and Skip like it could have been insensitive, because we were kind of joking around, we were having fun with it, and never did either of us. We weren't thinking like. I mean, save me here, Skip. What am I trying to say? Well,
I don't think necessarily when you say we were having fun with it. We were having fun with it like we have fun with everything. I don't want to sound melodramatic, but I'm a laugh or cry type of guy. I'm not typically in overreact mode and that sort of thing. So I think what can happen is, when I make an attempt at levity or you or S2H, it can be seen as, I think, insensitive. And again, you made a good point.
We didn't want to come off as that. So we figured we'd just redo it, right?
Well, and then the podcast is global. Yeah. And I think what is happening is, at least in the United States, we tend to be a little bit arrogant in the sense that we feel like I don't want to say that it's not important. We don't think of people outside the United States, but we tend to focus our opinions and how things directly impact us based primarily on us here in the United States. And I don't know that that's terribly fair, and that's not taking a shot at anybody or even us, because I said some things that were borderline insensitive, but again, it's not that I don't think anything was said by any of the three of us that was meant to be insensitive or meant to make light or to mock, but things are just getting to the point where, and I think people can see this on social media, it's getting really, really heated.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And you have people on both sides. You have people who are concerned and think that this is a very positive, proactive step to get in front of this, and that the numbers, will be better and will be able to pass through or pass by the situation sooner and move on. with the steps that have been taken, and other people just think that it's an overreaction. And I tend to think personally that I find the overreacting part, and especially the conspiracy part, oh my God, to be nauseating, quite frankly. But again, the nice thing with, it's a double-edged sword. Everybody can have their opinions, and everybody feels the way that they do, and they feel so well informed and things like that, when in reality it's just millions of people with opinions based on their own current situation. And I think a lot of these opinions, quite frankly, are a little bit selfish and based on inconvenience and things like that. None of us want to not train, as an example. And that's what we're here for. We're here primarily to talk about bodybuilding and training and things of that nature. So I understand that. I don't want to be inconvenienced either. I know that I'm in a different situation because I have resources that a lot of people don't have. But I'm also dealing at the same time with the grocery aspect, with people, social distancing, which is it's the catchphrase is kind of funny because there has to be a label, but
that's like the thing too. That's where I think things are different. It just felt a little outdated, the original show we did, because when we recorded it, social distancing was not a thing yet. The gyms were still open.
Right.
The grocery stores were definitely getting pretty slammed, but that wasn't a thing yet, and that is a thing now. So I felt like, and you felt like, let's just redo this thing, because if we're going to put this out, then we want to kind of be. Also, what the other thing is, man, is that I feel like there's a lot of people that need some fucking entertainment right now. Like you said, people are feeling really stressed. People are feeling pretty tense about this. I can only imagine, what everybody is going through, especially like around the world. There's places, I've heard from some guys in Italy. Shout out to everybody in Italy right now. Anybody who's listening that's over there, man, just hang tight. We feel for you. But I feel like with our position, it is our place, because we're not doctors, we're not scientists. We're not going to lay out shit for you that's like, this is what you need to do and how you can handle it. And, we're not going to try to act like we can explain what's going on. But what we can do is we can talk about bodybuilding, and we might be able to make you laugh. Well, Skip can make you laugh. I can set you up for the jokes. You can make the jokes.
You set them up, I'll knock them down.
We've got some people that are already chiming in. Steve says, Skip and Scott, how can you talk about doomsday prepping without S2H?
That's a good point. The problem that people don't understand is we're not avoiding S2H in his opinion right now. He is his scheduling and him being able to be on when we need to at the last minute is very difficult to coordinate. Okay. Plus, I don't like his opinion anyway. So there's that.
Also, he added Skip's looking a little pale today, which I would not agree with. You look freaking dark as shit, man. Have you been tanning?
What? I get this. No, I get this, and I'll tell you why. If I just turned on a regular light, they don't understand that I've got white LEDs blaring in. You do, but they don't understand these white LEDs. I'm dark as shit right now, but it's not coming across.
No, you look dark today. You look really dark, like. You look the opposite color of the blinds behind you. Right now. You look like you've been like working as a landscaper or something all summer long, like between like off college for the summer, back home, working as a roofer, maybe something like that.
I don't care about the tan as much anymore. What I'm more concerned about is my teeth looking white. The tanner I am, the whiter my teeth look.
That's a good call, man.
I could be jaundiced and you wouldn't know it. You'd be like, oh man, he looks really dark. But if I was white, you'd be like, yeah, he's got some liver problem.
Yeah, right. So where do we want to take this thing today? We're going to do this. We're going to do this again. We are going to talk coronavirus roundabout. More so, we're going to talk about what our situation we're in, because basically anybody who's tuning into this thing is a bodybuilder. What do we excel at, Skip? We excel at we excel at our sticking in our patterns, Mm-hmm. I'm getting some weird feedback. Hold on a second. There we go. We excel at like doing the same thing like Groundhog's Day, day in, day out. Here's what I do. I go to the store. I know where my meat is. I go walk right up to the meat. I grab the amount of meat that I need every time I go there. I put it in my basket.
This does not sound good. I mean, if someone's just
I grab my meat. Yeah, you're right.
You just walk up. You know where your meat is. You
grab my meat.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know where I'm getting at though. Here, walk over to the rice. I pick up the rice. Put that in my bag. Blah blah blah. Down the road. That's after the gym. None of these things. Everything is kind of turned upside down. So I feel like this. So it is a first world problem, right? Mm-hmm. That we have as bodybuilders, getting taken out of our Groundhog's Day. We're all kind of, I think, scrambling. Everybody's like, wait a minute, we can't go to the gym? Like it's the end of the world, you know? But in reality, man, a lot of us have our lives set up around that. That's our favorite time of the day, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like everything we do is set up to go to the gym. So now we can't go to the gym. Now our food sources are questionable. Are we going to be able to maintain? Personally, I'll tell you what, man, here's my thought, because, you know, I worked in grocery stores for a long time. They weren't prepared for people to clean the shelves out, right? Because they weren't expecting that. But that said, I feel like what I've seen now today, I had to run out to the store. The shelves are getting they're starting to restock. And now everybody has 2 weeks of food in their homes. That's not going to happen again where everybody rushes out. So I feel like we might see a little bit of a hit through this week. Just a prediction, but my experience with grocery stores, knowing how things work, they are going to restock. That food is going to be there. I think it's going to be a little bit easier to get food come next week. What do you think?
Well, and I think people need to, and I agree with you, I think people need to understand, though, very clearly, too, that, and I don't think anybody would argue this, there isn't a food crisis or a food shortage. It looks like that based on people's, I think it was unpredictable that people were going to hoard and just rip the shelves apart, and the toilet paper is just the funniest thing to me. And a little bit of bottled water too, just because the virus isn't going to be, you know, it's not going to come out of your tap water or out of your well water either. But nonetheless, I understand people. Basically, there's just a general anxiety. We could talk about bodybuilders, because when you're outside of that structure and you're out of your routine, I know myself, I get anxious. I'm the type of guy that if I miss my exit, I have a familiar route that I go to the same gas station. I'll run out and try gas going to a gas station. I have this familiarity thing that I built up over years where I specific. And sometimes when it's not the route my wife would take, she can't understand, and she doesn't like it either, because apparently it causes anxiety for her because she doesn't have a steering wheel in front of her. But the point is we have these routines and we have this structure, and anything that takes us away from that causes anxiety. Now, if you throw that into the general population, they're having this too. They're reacting a little bit differently, I think, in this overreacting type of situation. But yet at the same time, is it overreaction when they still need to get their food, and we're complaining because we can't get the three things that we need? Whether it be chicken breast. See, we typically as bodybuilders eat 5 or 7 of the same foods every single day. Every day. And then we get mad when, and I admitted this on my, you know, the fat lady in front of me had 4 packages of chicken breast and I couldn't get any. and it was just like, bitch, you don't need that chicken breast. And I caught myself and I thought, you know, that's not fair either. People are going to still continue to lessen their own anxiety and not have to be worried about food and providing for their kids and running out, and people there's an unpredictable, there's a bit of an unpredictableness in the whole thing, and people don't know, we don't know, we can guess. I think you're right. I don't think it's going to last. This hysteria part of it isn't going to last more than a couple 2-3 weeks. But I also think too, you made a good point earlier, the other thing that we can bring, you and I and people in our position is who have been doing this for a very, very long time, is resources. Being resourceful, because we've done it for so long, and we may not have seen this specific situation, but there are things that have happened throughout the years and years that we have trained that have made us utilize resources that we otherwise couldn't. And I posted about this on my social media, and some people took advantage of it. I couldn't find chicken breast to save my ass. I went to 3 different places. You can always call and check when the deliveries are going to come in, and they can ask you. And I always said, and this is true, the higher end places typically don't have the run on their meats and things like that the regular grocery stores or the Walmarts and the cheaper places have. Sure. So that's an option. The other thing is I ended up ordering from Whole Foods through Amazon, because Amazon owns Whole Foods, through Amazon Prime, and they deliver tomorrow. They're delivering 12 pounds of chicken breast and 9 containers of liquid egg whites, which those 2 things I could not find. And yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's either that or I don't know where I'm going to get it, and I have to spend all that time running around through traffic, through the hysteria, dealing with the long lines, dealing with people who could potentially be sick as well, or I could be sick and I could be passing it on to someone else who's there trying to get their groceries. So there are I just ordered again today because they're starting to limit how much you can get. I got 12 pounds first day. Someone else said they got 20 pounds. I was only able to get 5 today. So, the day after Thursday, which happens to be Friday, so I could have said Friday, they're going to deliver 5 more pounds. I'm just trying to be prepared. I'm not going for 40 pounds of chicken. And if people want to go for 40 pounds of chicken, they can do that, I guess. But you also can't go for 40 pounds of chicken and then claim that you're mad at everybody for hoarding, because 40 pounds of chicken is kind of, it's getting up there to the hoarding level too.
Unless you're like Branch Warren, who probably eats that's like 5 days right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. 4 days of food.
12 lasts me about a week with just myself and my wife, but I don't eat a lot of other, protein sources either. So I think there's resources even with training at home and that sort of thing. But I would emphasize, and like I said, I don't know how much you want to dig into this, but I really would like people to be a little bit, and I have to check myself on this too, because like I said, I don't want to miss any training either, and I've got resources that other people don't have, and not everybody has that, but there is selfishness to what we do and what we're doing, and during times like this, and I think we really need to remind ourselves to be compassionate and to keep everything in perspective. A couple weeks, if it only goes a couple weeks, and people say, well, my gym it's going to be closed for 30 days. Just because they're closed for 30 days doesn't mean that they can't change that policy too and see that numbers are decreasing and we're in a better position in 2 to 3 weeks, and that those things can start to open up with less, or maybe with restrictions, and we kind of start to get back to more of a normalcy.
And here's the thing too with that, those places, they want to open back up. So they, they're going to try to probably open back up as soon as they possibly can. So one thing we wanted to talk about today was probably going to be training at home. I've seen a lot of stuff of, everyone on Instagram now is, I saw Chris Bumstead like squatting his couch. I saw him doing stuff at home. I've seen everybody doing all sorts of at-home workouts. Victoria and I spent yesterday and then this morning putting together a gym in the basement here. Man, I'll tell you what too, it was kind of cool, because when I was like 14 years old, 13 to 14 is when I really started getting into training. And my dad's buddy, Rick, he had a pretty cool setup in his basement. He ended up getting this nice Weightman Lat Pulldown. And like on the weekend, Saturday, I would save back day to train with Rick. And Rick would come over, and he, real good friend of the family. He'd come over and even pick me up. He lived like 15, 20 minutes away. But as a good friend of my dad, and knowing that I love training, he would come and pick me up, take me to his house. We'd bang it out. He'd hit back and I think we did back and biceps together. It was like a 4-day split. Chest, triceps, back, biceps, shoulders, and traps, or I don't know, and then legs, of course. But and I loved that thing, man. So a couple years ago, he moved. And he said, hey, Scott, do you want that lat pull down? He said, it's in the basement. You could take that. You could take any of the equipment down there. And at this point, man, I've got a gym membership. I've got 3 gym memberships, So I couldn't bear to have that thing disappear, Mm-hmm. So I said, sure, man. Thank you very much. Went over there, disassembled it. I took that. And I took this rack, just a curl bar rack that you would set your bar on. And this thing was totally vintage it was from a gym in the 60s. It's just welded together. And it reminds me of what all the equipment looked like in the gym when I was a kid. Just real simple, but beautiful structure, very solid, weighs a ton. I took both of those pieces. We set them up. And today, the first time in 25 years, I used that lat pull down. And I'll tell you, Skip, it was a beauty, man. I had a great workout. I was doing that. I'm lucky enough to be able to make my own dumbbells. I have some fixed dumbbells, but they only go up so heavy. I was able to make a 105-pound dumbbell, and I was doing dumbbell dead stop rows. I was doing pull downs. I was doing cable pullovers. It was a beautiful little back and bicep workout today, man. I got a nice pump. I got a good sweat going, listened to my music, and I felt freaking awesome, man. And realistically, I could still grow on that. Now, I don't think that everybody's going to be able to continue growing long term with at-home workouts when they have to use body weight and all of that. But that said, I think that a lot of people will be able to get a benefit out of this. And I think there's something special about going back to basics that when all this is over, I think that there's going to be some people some people that have always had a very well-equipped gym that might have a better appreciation for that gym when they get back to it.
I can't disagree with that. And I think, too, that it's important to point out that people are going to be doing things right now with their training that their body is not used to.
Yeah.
And I think from a psychological standpoint, it's easy to say, well, I'm not able to stack, the hammer press with 8 plates, so I'm not going to go.
Right.
If you're going to be doing something that is so completely different than what your body is used to, and it's only going to be for a short period of time, that's a stimulus. I mean, that's basically at its core what causes your body to adapt is a stimulus that it's not used to. So if I were to do one arm dumbbell, complete stop rows with a 105-pound dumbbell, I am almost certainly going to get sore. And soreness doesn't necessarily mean, it's not directly related to growth. And we can argue about the soreness and everything. But the point is if there is soreness, that still is an indication that that's a stimulus that the body has not seen. And you would kind of assume from there that, okay, that was enough work to cause, growth. As far as, back. So there are things that are going to happen that your body may not be used to. You may not consider to be the best option. But the truth is even if it's not the best option, and it may not be the best option, the alternative is nothing. So even though I think there can be growth and progress to some degree, depending on how you set things up in a situation like this, I almost, tell people to look at this like a maintenance phase from a growth standpoint. And you know what? Take this time, get a little leaner. Most of us can get a little leaner over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, even though it wasn't, part of your plan. And if you're prepping or what, 2, 3, 4 weeks is if you're just still training. It may not be, again, with all the plates and all the fancy equipment, but if you're training, you're going to maintain at that point. You might as well continue to get leaner. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, not a lot, but enough that it was concerning that, well, it's just so stressful right now. I'm going to kind of put everything on hold. And I thought, you're more than welcome to do that, but with all the stress going on, it's the one thing that you have complete control over to still continue to have your diet. Yes, it's a bit of an inconvenience because you still have to run down the foods, but we haven't even gotten to the food part. There are other resources for foods too that you sometimes look. You might not get chicken breast. Chicken breast is a bitch to find right now.
Yeah.
But there are other options, and not everybody has the money to switch out, say chicken breast with scallops or something to that effect. I get that.
Yeah.
You may have to pay a little bit more if you want it delivered or if you don't want to run all over the city to try to find your food. But again, it's just being resourceful and investing the time and being planful.
Yeah.
And I think that the large majority of people, they're going to be able to get through this because unless this were to go, if it's going to go 3-4 months and gyms are that is going to be tough.
Yeah.
But again,
then we'll have to get serious and start making shit,
Well, and the alternative really is then, even if it's 3 or 4 months, it's 3 or 4 months of maintenance type workouts that you are being creative and being resourceful or nothing. Yeah. It's either that or you throw up your hands. So you got to ask yourself at a time like this, really, how dedicated, how disciplined are you? Are you willing to dig down? And especially if you're going to compete, are you willing to do what it takes in a situation that came out of nowhere and was completely unpredictable? This is unprecedented. I've been training for 35 years. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, it's funny because I was telling a client, I had a couple things that I kind of amused myself with this last day or so, but I mentioned to one guy, I was like, hey, listen, he's prepping for a show. I was like, listen, you get through this. Then when you're old like me, you'll look at all the kids and you'll be like, you think you got it bad?
Right.
Try prepping through a pandemic. Back in 2020. And it's as
simple too. It's as simple too as, when we're talking about at home and everything else, it's cool that you got a lat pull, and some people have pretty elaborate home gyms. That's cool.
Yeah.
But if you could just get, even if it's not now, but you're preparing for you get 2 dumbbells that can go up to 50 or 60 pounds each.
Yep.
You're going to be pretty good in a situation like this, even if it's for as long as a month or so, because of side laterals, curls. And there's other options. There's, we had said this before. I think I mentioned this when we recorded on Sunday, but you can't find dumbbells because they're sold out everywhere, and they probably are. Then you go to Home Depot and you get 2 5-gallon buckets, plastic buckets with plastic roller grips on the handles, and you buy some sandbags. I mean, you can do side laterals, you can do curls, you could do rows with them, you can do anything that you can hold for lunges or a Bulgarian split squat. If you have resistance bands, that's going to go a long way. The problem with resistance bands is if you don't have equipment to attach it to, that can be kind of tough because, you know, you got to be very careful too, because if you attach it to a doorknob and it comes off and you're doing leg curls and it snaps you in your butthole, there are accidents that can happen here. Okay. But you know, chins, you can, a chin bar that goes in a door frame is about as old school as it comes, and they don't cost $20.
Yeah. Or just a rafter in your basement or your garage, you know. That's
Absolutely.
what I was hooking my bands up to, a pole in the basement, you know, and being able to do like a cable type of pullover with that. And I know I'll use that for tricep extensions and, you know, a bunch of other stuff. I had reshared a video today, actually. I had done a hamstring curl with a cable, or with a band. It worked out great, man. I mean, at the time I was just experimenting in the gym, looking for something different to do, and it felt like a nice finisher, but that wouldn't be a problem, man. You ever done a dumbbell hamstring curl? I found that like laying on a decline bench, I like that, with your legs hanging down the decline. That's a tough one, man, and you can't handle a ton of weight with that. I know Dusty had said, he said, 50-pound dumbbells. He said, you know, the last thing, say he's doing a chest workout, he said you could be certain he's going to do every other exercise before he gets to pressing. But then when he finally gets to pressing, you can be damn certain that he's going to be able to use those 50s, and he's going to be able to fatigue with them. You know, he's going to be doing 6-second negatives and, you know, holds in the stretch and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can still do a lot. And like you said, you might not be growing long term with something like that. But I really do believe in my heart that this is it's going to give people an appreciation for what they have, you know, and B, I do think, like kind of something you were leaning toward a bit ago, I think that it will kind of potentially weed some people out, you know. Some people, you know, we as a community, we complain about like the kids that are just, you know, in it for whatever, for the wrong reasons, I'll say, you know, and I think that without the shows, because shows are going to be delayed or canceled. I saw some shows are the Northeast posted for NPC that there are going to be some shows that are rescheduled, but a lot of the shows, I mean, they are getting canceled in the early part of the year. I imagine that some people are just going to go off their diet. At the same time, I imagine that there's going to be some guys that come in better and they're going to hold out. And I wonder, man, that when we get in, if this goes as planned and things do calm back down and that the June shows happen as expected, I imagine that there's going to be some people that are fucking shredded for those shows. People that were going to be competing in, you know, March and April that decided to hold on, and they're just going to get leaner and leaner. And maybe people are going to learn what it really takes to get shredded, because they were going to do an April show. If they hold on, they might be that much better 2 months later, right?
Yeah, and I'm telling my clients too, and even friends, that there really isn't any, you know, and I understand that it's up in the air. I totally get that. Yeah. But there's no real clear indication that this is going to last a long time.
Right.
If you've got shows in, you know, June, July, August, and you're starting a prep, I would encourage you to start your prep unless you just literally don't have resources.
Yeah.
If you're starting and you just don't have anything in your house and you live in the middle of, you know, BFE, and you've got to drive to gyms that are all closed, you know, it depends on where you are in the country. It depends on what country you're in, because the Midwest, I've told you, you're in the Midwest. You guys had closures to your gyms in Colorado before we did in South Florida.
Yeah.
And there are things that are going to play out. You know, there's some talk, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that the virus isn't going to do well or could potentially not do well in the hotter climates. Now, if that's the case, then that may have played into why South Florida had put it off a little bit and may have these closures right away, but the Midwest did because it was colder. I don't know. But there is still, the demographic matters.
Yeah.
So we just don't know what's going to happen right now. And I think, and this is just my opinion, and I certainly don't want to be wrong. I'm just giving my opinion. I could be completely dead wrong, but I would like to think that because there were so many proactive measures put in place with closures and trying to get ahead of this. I know that everybody hates it, or a large majority of people hate it, and it's an inconvenience and it's an overreaction, and it's to control the election and all this extra added horse shit.
Yeah.
That I do think that it's possible that life will begin to return to normal in as little as 4 to 6 weeks. And now, I didn't say, I don't want anybody coming back to me going, well, Skip's a dumbass. He said everything would be back to normal in 4 weeks. Yeah. All I'm saying is I do think that the potential is there for it to be starting to return to normal, like things starting to open back up, whether it be gyms or restaurants with less restrictions and being able to, here, go to the beach. You can't even go to the beach here. Yeah. So they're having a lot of cops and kids problems with people kids showing up on spring break in Miami.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah. I've seen the videos already where the cops literally, of course, the kids have no regard, most of them, for the cops. So they end up getting tackled and arrested.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. They're getting drugged through the sand because they just don't want to fucking listen, and they don't want to honor the fact that, this is just a giant inconvenience to me because I'm supposed to be on spring break acting like a fucking dumbass on my parents' money and get wasted.
Yeah.
And, they knew that information or should have had that information before they ever got here. So you don't want to be at a hotel in Miami or South Florida right now because you're going to be stuck with a bunch of dumbass kids drunk as shit with nowhere to go.
Oh, that does not sound fun. Hey, Karim just said, wait, how did Skip know about that incident with the doorknob in the asshole?
Yeah, tell him it should be client trainer privilege, so I apologize, but I never said his name. He just gave himself away.
Oh.
He's going to be pulling that resistant band out of his ass for the next week.
Josh mentioned a couple times like Rocky IV style. I was thinking about that earlier today. He was like training in the barn and stuff.
Yeah. Hey, look, if I had to train in my basement, I would just crank up the fucking music and I'd go to town on it, and I'd try to have fun too. I've got a resource that fortunate for me, it's a pretty nice setup, and if I were in Colorado or Michigan, I wouldn't have that. So I am fortunate, but I have to be careful too that do my part and clean up and make sure that I'm not passing anything on to anybody else or picking it up myself just because I'm training.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I have a resource as well here, and I decided, and maybe I might go there occasionally, but I decided for the most part I'm going to try to do what I can here at the house because I just feel like it would be the more responsible thing to do. At the end of the day, like you had kind of mentioned earlier, man, if I were a carrier or something like that, I don't want to spread it. The last thing I want to do is hurt someone else, and to hurt someone else because I wanted to go to the gym. Right. It's like that's the last thing that I need to do with my life. So yeah, I can dial it back. So yeah, I don't know, man. So you were saying too, you said, we hadn't even gotten into talking about the nutrition side of things. Do you have any other thoughts, maybe some creative ideas that people can use that maybe they're not thinking of? Because here's what I'll tell you right now. As a coach, I'll usually, like, if I want somebody to eat lean meats, for a particular meal, I'll give them options. So that meal may say you could use, 6 ounces of chicken breast or 99% fat-free ground turkey or a light fish. Right. And then lo and behold, 4 months down the road, that same person says to me, can I switch to something else because I'm just so sick of chicken? You're like, yeah, we had several options on there. Or turkey breast, that's another one. You could do a lot of different things. But here's the deal, like we were talking about before, Groundhog's Day. We get into our pattern. We do things the same way. Another option in that case would be you could also cook it a different way. The guy's been cooking his chicken the exact same way. It tastes like rubber. He's been doing that for 4 months. Yes, I would be sick of that too. But you could, take that chicken, you could grill, you could use a different season. Anyway, that's a whole other story. We get locked into our heads that it's got to be chicken breast. It's got to be this seasoning. What are maybe some of the other options that people aren't thinking of that they can use to get what they need, Skip?
Well, number one is just, if you're not going to be flexible and you're not going to be able to bend, then you might as well sit on your couch and drink beer, because this isn't going to be a situation. Really, it's not going to be a situation, whether it be training or, supplementation is another good example. I don't want to get off on the tangent because we're on nutrition, but good luck getting gear in the next couple months. That's not going to happen either. So, and that's not the top priority, but to a lot of us, it's right up there with training and nutrition, and I get that. But
sure,
you're going to have to be flexible, and you're going to have to make sacrifices. So it can be as simple. Look, you're not going to, and I was just there. They're not going to sell out. They're going to sell out the basics. They're not going to sell out the things. Like I went and I got, and I understand there's a difference in price. So if it's not within your wheelhouse, I get that. But there are other options. Peanut butter is gone. And good luck getting anything. The last peanut butter to go is going to be the one without sugar in it.
Yeah,
and I get that.
Right.
But it's gone too, and that means then there's almond butter, there's cashew butter. Is it more expensive? Yes, but there still are options there.
Yeah.
When it comes to meat, like I said, some of the fish. I mean, I was at Fresh Market a couple days ago, and the place was just wiped out, but there was a ton of shrimp. So, is cooked shrimp ideal? It probably isn't. It's not great. But at the same time,
what's bad about shrimp?
I don't want to say that shrimp is bad. What I'm saying is the processed shrimp that is already cooked.
Oh.
There's questions as to whether it's, the protein has been degraded at all, what the quality is of it after it's cooked and has to be preserved because it's already been cooked, versus raw shrimp, as an example. And that's a lot of big difference in price too. But the point is, I've prepped on it before.
Yeah.
And it worked just fine. Maybe it wasn't ideal on paper, but it did work real well. And I had every resource at that time. In fact, I was paying through the ass. It was when the last season Jimmy Kennedy was in town in his off season. Okay. And once a week we would go to Whole Foods and they would give us like 18 or 20 pounds of cooked. The sous chef there would cook the chicken breast, and it was the most awesome. Now you paid $14 a pound for it. Yeah. But it was pretty damn nice, and I was still having a shrimp meal a day, and it was a nice change of pace. And I didn't cook the shrimp. I bought the big jumbo pre-cooked shrimps.
Yeah.
Still expensive. I have prepped on scallops for a long time for two reasons. And obviously I'm not prepping, but the point is in the past, when I was on a cutting phase, there were two reasons I used them. I have this issue where I get food caught in my throat if it's dry, because the muscle it's a sphincter muscle right before your stomach, it needs to be stretched. So I have to basically, when I chew my food, liquefy it, or it'll start to get stuck and it'll back up and it hurts real bad. Anyway, scallops is because I can cook them in water and put a little bit of seasoning in it, and I can keep them wet. They don't get stuck in my throat. But they're also 20 pounds of
$20. Yeah.
So that means that I'm spending like $30 a day on protein. But the point is those never ran out. Now, are you going to pay that kind of money? That you may not. But if you need your basics, look into the delivery services, look into the higher end, the Trader Joe's, the Whole Foods, the Fresh Markets, and ask them when's the truck coming in, and be there. You have to be resourceful. If they tell you it's going to be in at 10 o'clock, be waiting there and snag 15 pounds and cook half of it and put the other half in your freezer. And then 3 or 4 or 5 days later, before you need chicken again. This is all about being planful and organized. Yeah. If you don't prep your meals ahead of time, it's like not prepping your meals ahead of time and then going somewhere and going, oh, I got stuck and I didn't have food, so I ate like a pig. That's what happens. You have to be prepared. So even though you've got enough chicken for a couple weeks, 5 days later or 4 days later, you go find more so that you have you have enough. Is it hoarding? I don't think that from a bodybuilding standpoint, it's hoarding. You're a week, maybe 10 days ahead. Yeah. Who isn't week or 10 days ahead anyway, usually. So
hopefully.
Sure. I had to, it was kind of funny how it works out. In situations like this, I've always said this, whether it be injuries or anything else when you go into train, if you're forced to do something that you otherwise wouldn't do, you might as well use it as a learning experience. And God damn it, if every single time I approach it that way, I learn something when I'm injured, whether it's a tweak to a specific exercise that works real well, a different exercise, something that I've not done in a long time, or a piece of equipment that I passed over numerous times because I've thought, I used that 20 years ago and it sucked.
Yeah.
There are things that you can do, or things that you can learn. And the same thing goes with nutrition, as well. So one of the things I did was I came across, they were all out of oats other than quick oats. And I don't like quick oats.
You don't like quick oats?
No, it's splitting hairs, and I understand that. I would have used it if there was nothing else there. Yeah. But because they're powdered, the finer something like that gets, all the way to the point where it's like a carb powder. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's sweet potato powder. I'm not using it, because when it's fine like that, it doesn't take as long to be digested.
Sure.
So you have, not necessarily glycemic, specifically glycemic index issues, but you kind of do, because it's going to hit your bloodstream quicker. It's just
absolutely. That's why rice cakes and rice are two different things. They powder that rice down to make the rice cakes, and people sometimes don't get that, I think, and that's kind of like a whole IIFYM conversation right there.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of it. A carb isn't a carb isn't a carb.
And it's the same thing, I think, with protein powder. I will not drink a protein drink without an added fat source.
Okay.
I will not do it, because I just think that it's even though it's my blend that has different speeds, and things like that for protein, which is true. I don't mean to smile like it's not true. What I'm saying is, it doesn't have the impact. It's not a dramatic impact. Yeah. The blend over just say a whey, but I know I've drank whey before in a crunch, and it just rips through me in 30 minutes. I'm hungry. So fat or fiber, for those who don't know, slows digestion. So it slows the rate that those nutrients hit your bloodstream and how fast they digest. So I always have fat. I went to back to the oats. There was nothing but steel cut oats, and in the past I haven't had them for like 10 years, and I don't really like them. And especially because I like to use oats. Right now I don't cook them. I put them in my protein drinks as an added carb. I let them sit there for 10 minutes or so to kind of thicken up a little bit. So all I could do was get steel cut oats, and I put them in my protein drink, and you have to leave them there longer because they don't change too much in 10 minutes.
Sure.
And these things, and I haven't been dieting that long, but I'm like, oh my God, these are fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, these are so much more satiating and almost like granola-y. And they weren't flavored. I had to check. I'm like, this motherfucker's flavored? And I just bought some fucked up, brown sugar shit.
Yeah.
And they weren't. They're just really good. And they're kind of crunchy, so it takes longer to, not crunchy, but there's just a different texture to them. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to stay with these. Huh. So it's something that I wouldn't have gone to, that I was forced to go to. And I'm like, oh, this is all. Same thing with egg white. I'm not a big fan of liquid egg whites, because I feel like there's so much more volume in liquid egg whites to get the same amount of protein, where I could eat a smaller amount of chicken breast or a meat instead of this big. But I tell you, I put that together with rice. What I do is I split the egg whites, the protein, in half. Egg whites and like chicken breast.
Yeah.
Or top round. I was forced to get some top round the other day. I cut it in real thin strips. And then I put rice in there. I put some mustard in there. And I'm not a huge mustard fan, but it adds moisture. And I put some onions and peppers and cook it all together. Put some, if I don't put mustard, I put soy sauce. And I'm eating this stuff like it's fucking Chinese.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is some good shit.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool when you can figure stuff out like that.
And that's the part about being resourceful. There are just things that you can make work. The protein, and I need to make sure that I elaborate on this so that people don't take me for the wrong. But the protein in chicken breasts, the protein in egg whites, the protein in beef, even though they have different amino acid profiles, one isn't going to make you grow any more than the other. One isn't going to make you leaner than the other than the fat content in those. So the calories obviously will change, right? Because you'll have more fat you'll have less fat in egg whites, obviously, because there's virtually none, versus chicken, versus even a very lean ground beef. But if you take into consideration the fat content, protein is protein when it comes to growth or dieting. You're not going to build more muscle, anything that you can quantify anyway or see.
Yeah.
Over the course of a year, because you chose beef instead of chicken, or chicken instead of egg whites, or egg whites instead of beef. The only thing that's going to change is your caloric intake. People will say, and they have for years, red meat made me bigger and stronger. Well, it probably also made you fatter because it's just more calories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if you can stay lean, it's still more calories. So it's not the actual protein, the amino acid profile that is so much better than chicken or fish or anything. It's protein. It's just protein. So mix and match, use what you like. About the only thing that I refuse to do is I will not eat tuna from a can.
Yeah. Well, hey, that could be an option though, but not for you maybe, but definitely if you're looking for a lean meat source, they have canned chicken breast as well. You can get like a white meat chicken breast in a can. It's not bad. It's not terrible. If you're using, here's something I've done in the past. I've used avocado as my fat source, and I'll take tuna fish and mix that as kind of like almost like a tuna salad, but using avocado instead for my fat. There's still avocados at the store. It's funny because all the bread is gone. All the processed foods are gone, but you could find a shit ton of vegetables still. The people didn't take vegetables, so there is that stuff that's available.
At the regular stores, you're right. You go to the higher end stores like the Fresh Markets and Whole Foods, bare. There isn't one sweet potato to be found anywhere.
That's funny, man.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why though, and it might seem obvious, but there's a socioeconomic plane thing going on, and the people with less money tend to eat shittier because they can buy more food. The more nutritious food and organic and things like that and grass-fed meat and stuff, it is more expensive, and that is where chicken breast is going to be out at Whole Foods, just like it's going to be out anywhere else, with the exception of it just costs more. So, but the people who tend to go to Fresh Market or Whole Foods, they go there all the time, so they're going to go there and spend the money. So, I have noticed the produce, but I was able to get some avocados and things like that.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it's and you make a good point with the canned meat. If you can combine it with a fat source like a good healthy mayo or an avocado, which is obviously even better, or even like an oil or something, then it's palatable. Yeah. But I ate too much of that shit when I was a teenager.
So many of us did, man.
And I'll choke on it because of my throat issue.
Oh yeah.
It's way too dry. Even if I liquefy it, those little pieces will still get. If I chase it with water, it won't work. It has to have fat with it to kind of make it slimy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Slippery, if you want to call it that. So that's a good. I never thought, and I've made some weird ass combinations in my life, but I never thought about putting avocado in there. But that's a good.
You know where I learned that from? When I lived in Mexico. So I lived in central Mexico for a while, and it was interesting because the foods that they had there, they were not the foods you think of like in the like the tourist areas of Mexico. It wasn't like everybody was eating chimichangas every day, stuff like that.
Corn.
Right. But I mean, they did have some really good street food there, but they also had, like, one of the places that I went, they would slice an avocado in half. They had it peeled. Then where the pit was, they took a scoop of tuna fish and it had tuna and mayo in it, but they dropped that right in there. And you just kind of take it. It was like really, I mean, as you could imagine too. So they had 3 different seasons. I'm getting really hungry right now just thinking about this. My mouth's watering. They had 3 different seasons of avocados, and at the time it was like the bumpy avocados that we're familiar with, and it was like this like creamy, delicious avocado, and they had it filled with the tuna. You just kind of take like a slice of it with your fork, and you get that combo of tuna. And then I thought about it later. I was like, yeah, why don't I just blend that together? And so it was something I kind of invented, but I figured it was a way that I could eat that without having added carbs. I could meet my macros with my fats and my proteins at the time for a contest prep. Of course, I did burn myself out on it, and I couldn't eat avocado again for like the next year. But, I get it. Yeah, it's definitely something that could work. And for people that are budget minded, I don't know where the tuna fish sits because I'm not eating it right now on the shelves. But, some people, they might be able to find some somewhere. That might be an option too, right?
Well, and when you get something like that, it lasts forever. It doesn't go bad.
Right.
So, I mean, and you can, take it with you. Not that everybody's running around a whole lot right now, but, it'll stay good for obviously quite a while. More doomsday-ish than anything else, I think.
Jeff Nesher said, I've been reduced to getting my macros from pig's feet and cocoa butter.
That's Jeff. I'll tell you what, he's probably eating a lot of his, he makes a smoked salmon dip.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking crazy good. He's down here in Florida, and he just started this business, and it is fucking good. So he's got plenty of smoked salmon at his place. I do know that.
Nice.
He's not going to be going short on protein anytime soon. He's being a smartass. That's an inside joke right there.
Oh, okay.
He expects me to laugh and everybody to go, "What the fuck is that supposed to mean?" But I get him. He's a funny guy.
So anything else we should cover before we get to, because we still have the questions. What we're gonna do here is, next thing we're gonna do is we are gonna cut to the original questions we had for Blood, Sweat, and Gear. So you guys are still gonna get all that in the recorded episode here. That'll be all coming out. Anybody who's watching live, that's coming out on Friday now. Anything else we should cover here, Skip, before we get to that?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like we cover. There's always stuff to cover, when it comes to nutrition and stuff. But again, it just falls back to being flexible and being resourceful and willing to kind of make changes on the fly, and substitute things sometimes. So I feel for the person who really has zero options, but I think that is kind of the exception to the rule. I think more people think they have zero options than they actually do.
It's a matter, just like we're talking about with the gym stuff, it's a matter of getting creative right now.
Sure.
And if you can get creative with your food, if you can get creative with your training, that we can get through this. And I think that the people that are going to do that are the people that freaking love this sport.
Right.
If you love bodybuilding, if you have a path, I go back, man. I remember this guy. It was my second contest, and it was my girlfriend's show. So it was her first show. And after the show, we went and we got dinner, and we went so her girlfriend came with us. And so it was her girlfriend's boyfriend, and he was kind of a dick, honestly. And he was a guy who was like one of those people where you had to be around him because he was like friend of a friend type thing.
Right. Yep.
So he's at the dinner with us, and the guy was pretty overweight too. So I do want to say that. And I think that going to see a bodybuilding show was a little challenging for him, And he said, well, all you guys, he didn't say you guys. He said bodybuilding. He said that whole thing, it was all about vanity. And and I said, and I tried to explain to him, I was like, well, to me, this is like art, and he said, well, a true artist doesn't need people to see what he did. They just make the art for the love of it. He was being a real dick about it. I was like, yeah, okay. But, there's something about the competition. And I tried to explain it to him, but I remember the guy was being a dick at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, there's some reality to it that, if you don't have a show to compete for right now, if you don't have the outside things that can excite us and inspire us, that you could slip off right now, But for those of us that really love the sport, I think that we are going to plug in, that we are going to get creative, that we are going to get through this thing. And in such a short period of time in the scheme of things, hopefully we're going to be able to look back and this will have just been a blip,
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that people may find it easier for me to say that because I've been training for 35 years. So,
right.
3 weeks of workouts or 4 weeks, it don't really matter much to Skip because he's been doing, it still does though, because as much as they may not impact me in the long run and almost certainly won't, because you can get back shit in a week or two pretty easily, even if you do nothing and stay on your diet. That's why even people who are prepping right now, even if you can't train, just stay on your fucking diet. Do your cardio. You'll flatten out. You'll atrophy a little. And then in 2 weeks, especially if you're still on gear, you'll just blow the fuck up again.
Yeah.
And no one will know the difference. You will have no aches and pains because all the little niggles... Isn't that? Yeah. The little minor things that are bothering you won't be bothering you after you haven't trained for a few weeks.
That's a good point.
You won't be overtrained.
Yep.
So sometimes, again, it comes back to what I was saying. When you're forced to do something, there can be a benefit that you just don't even see until it's done.
Yeah.
So stay lean, get lean. Don't pull the plug on your shows if they're, in, June or July or August. June, it could impact shows in June, but it may not impact them everywhere. Maybe you find, because people need to understand too that by and large, the NPC is not canceling shows as much as the state governments are limiting the gathering of people, and that's what's causing. Promoters don't want to cancel their shows. They're losing a shit ton of money when they cancel a show. So I can tell you right now, if you think that promoters are, I mean, people who've said promoters are greedy, be fair and be consistent. Maybe they are greedy. They don't want to lose the money. That's their livelihood.
Sure.
So they're not going to cancel them if they don't have to. If there are states that have those restrictions for gatherings and they still have them in June, there may be other states that don't have those restrictions, and you can compete somewhere else. You can cross the state line and compete in a regional show. Yeah. Don't pull the plug yet. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that if you pull the plug, I really would. I'd question your discipline unless you have, or your dedication and your passion for what you're doing, unless that is in. And do you hear that door? That's Zuri trying to get out, driving. I keep moving.
Oh, Zuri.
And I'm like, God, I didn't even know she was in here. She's trying to open the door, but I locked it. Because I thought they were all out. But anyway, the point is unless you have a show in the next 4 to 6 weeks, it probably would be a good idea if you got a show in the next 4 to 6 weeks to make alternate plans. Push it out a little bit further. Yep. Hold yourself in limbo right now. Maintain everything, but stay focused. Because the truth is there's going to be a significant impact on the people who show up. From gear to people who are disciplined and continue with the program versus those that aren't. And I'd go so far as to say this, and I understand this is a bold statement, but I already complain about people getting pro cards in different divisions that sometimes aren't pro caliber. Yeah. There's going to be more this year because there's going to be a lot of people who don't stick it out and push further. They either pull the plug on their prep entirely and just turn it into an off season and figure out compete next year, or they're going to compete later in the year. And these shows in June, July, and August, they're probably going to kick out some pros that otherwise, and this is not a slam at anybody who wins. You win legit, and you were there, and you earned it, and you stuck it out, and you went through the process when other people were giving up. You deserve that. Yeah. You deserve that. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody. All I'm saying is, and I'm going to have to let her out here in a second because she's just going to continue to beat that door up. But there are still going to be some pro cards that are going to not be the caliber over the summer months that they probably should be. And there's really no way around that. You can't hold that against the
We will see. We will see.
You can't hold it against the promoter. It's going to impact things for
the people that were going to do junior USAs are going to hold out. They're going to do junior nationals, and then they're going to be absolutely peeled because they had a few more weeks to keep going. You know, we will see. It'll be exciting. Skip, I'm post-workout right now from my basement gym. Our 25-minute show has lasted an hour almost, I think. I'm starting to go hypoglycemic. I got to run upstairs and dig into my stockpile of chicken breast and rice, or else I'm going to pass out. So I think we should cut to break. When we come back for the recorded version, we'll be going to our questions that we recorded on Sunday. Guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for everybody who's joining us live. Hang in there. We will get through this thing, right, Skip?
Mm-hmm. Hang in there, absolutely.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Blood, Sweat, and Gear with Skip Hill, S2H. I'm Scott McNally. We've got a ton of questions. I'm going to turn to these questions. We've collected these from our Facebook group. If anybody wants to join the group, take part in the next show, we'd love to have your questions, topic ideas, bodybuilding stuff, off-topic stuff, whatever you got, send it to us. It's called Advices Radio. Anyway, here we go. Injectable pre-workout blends. Good, bad, and the ugly. I'm about to try one from a lab that has insane ingredients that I never used. What do you think of this? 50 milligrams of test base, okay? 25 milligrams of trend base, 10 milligrams of Superdrol, 3 milligrams of methyltren, 2 milligrams of check drops. He says, I think S2H would have something to say on this.
Yeah, it's called heart attack.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Man, that's going to be, I'll tell you one thing. I'd say in my day, that's something I probably would have tried.
I bet.
But I'm going to say if you have any tendencies towards hypertension, I would avoid that probably like the plague.
Or just being a dick, because that'll be gas on a fire.
I mean, check drops on their own can make you a little bit crazy, but I'd say you're definitely. I'm going to take it on like the general overview. Your blood pressure is going to go sky high or pretty high. B, it's probably not going to be the most comfortable injection ever. So don't put it somewhere you're gonna have to, like, if you're going to do like chest and be sitting down or laying on benches, I wouldn't put it in my glute because it probably is going to feel like someone stuck a golf ball in there. It may go smooth, but I don't know. It depends what they put it in, exfoliate and all that. But you're probably going to get some blood pressure. I'd probably start really slim pickings on that one, and not don't go jamming the. I guess he'll probably go 1 cc, but it's hard to say. I would say hypertension would be an issue, though.
So breaking this down a little bit, now methyltren, I remember having used it once orally, and I think I worked up to 500 micrograms a day. That's a half a milligram. This has 3 milligrams in it.
3 milligrams?
Yeah, plus 10 milligrams of Superdrol, which that's not super high, but it is with the methyltren, and it is injectable.
It is injectable, yeah. That's the
25 milligrams of tren base on top of the methyltren, plus 50 milligrams of test base. I don't have any experience with check drops, but I feel like you throw that on top of it, that's like throwing high octane gasoline on a raging fire,
But not only do you get the peak, this is my concern. Look, I can appreciate that he's thinking about it during training. There'll certainly be, you will be, if you're not psycho training on that, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Because that could take a librarian and make them want to just go into a mall and kill everybody. That is a vicious, it would just have such a psychological impact. It would make you, it would just amp you up big time. But here's the problem with that, and this is what I don't like about big protocols or heavy protocols pre-workout like that, is when you get that giant peak, you also get that giant crash. So it could be argued, well, you're getting the peak and everything else while you're training, but you also have to deal. Anytime you're having, a peak like that, you're also going to have to deal with potential, kickback from estrogen afterwards when it comes crashing. So you're going to have these, if you think it's not going to impact your mood 4 hours after you train, it's probably going to. So you're going to have your hormone levels all over the place. It's not something personally that I would want to do. I played around, you guys know, because I talked about it with the injectable Anadrol.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as crazy as I thought it would be. But at the same time, I didn't like the idea of that huge peak and then it falling off. So I don't know. I wouldn't. Check drops that is just some vicious shit. Never mind the other shit in there too. Obviously,
yeah.
It is too. That's a. I would say, Scott. I'm curious what you think. I don't think I've heard of a pre-workout injectable combination like that ever in my 30 years of using gear.
I'm gonna say this. You better check it and see if it's even suspending. In solution.
That's a good question.
It could. If you look at it, it's starting to build up on the bottom of the vial, which it very well could. I'd be curious if you suspended correctly.
Yeah, if you can go back through trend base, test base. So what the hell? What the hell is holding?
That's a lot of methyltren. What do you say? 3 milligrams?
3 milligrams of methyltren.
Dude, that alone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man.
Drops alone would be good. Yeah. It's just that's pretty much the overkill.
Yeah,
it's like kill overkill.
Yeah, and I know.
I think you're gonna have headaches probably. I wouldn't doubt if you took that and 15, 20 minutes later you're training, you start getting really bad headache. Headaches, your ears turn red.
Yeah. And I'll do a decline bench and your eyeballs shoot out of your fucking head.
I'll give you just to give you guys or him an example. He's watching now too. An example of somebody who is really hardcore. Jordan Peters. He's a fan of using intense pre-workouts like Super Draw, like Methyltren, stuff like that, Halo. If he's in a hard, and he'll use the stuff in the off season too, because his whole thing is progressive, or at least it still is pretty much, but he's adapted a little bit, changed it a little bit, but progressive overload. So for him, he's eating as much food as he can, and he's trying to beat the logbook every time he trains. So when he's in a hard push, he's going to add something like one of these compounds in. But what he'll do is he might take 2 weeks with Halo, and then a week with Super Draw. He's going to rotate that stuff. In my opinion, the way to use bodybuilding drugs is to use them, play it like a good hand of cards. Play the cards when you need them. You don't take all your good cards and throw them on the table on the first round. You know what I mean? Then what are you going to do? What do you have left? And also then you're fucked because you've stressed your body so hard at this point. It's like now you've got nothing left. Now you need to take downtime.
Yeah. That's pretty much everything but the kitchen sink. I mean, I can't help but presume that the person who thought of that was just basically like, let's just think of the most insane, over the top, and because you just hit it, you just nailed the, and you make a good point about Jordan because Jordan, and I want to be very clear on this. I do not think he's reckless. I do not think he does not care about his health. All I'm saying is if he is willing to do those harsher compounds as pre-workouts and it's only a fraction of what you just listed,
right,
then that tells you something right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it may not be real.
No, but we have to assume that it is only because if it's not, and I mean, then that just, makes the whole situation.
There's some compounds in there that are not the most common. I mean, check drops alone.
Yeah.
Is not something that it comes around. I mean, because originally they were sublingual years ago.
Yeah.
And
had you ever taken them?
Yeah.
Well, they were for dogs. It wasn't a human.
Yeah. I don't think it took more than. Man, it was like 500 micrograms to a gram, and you were off to the races.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's and that methyltrensin, boy, that's I've used, dude, anything over 500 micrograms of that stuff is like pretty insane.
Yeah, I worked up to 750. I started with 250. I went to 500. I went to 750, and a couple days in on 750, it was too much for me.
Tapped out.
And I tapped out there. Plus, it was summertime. It was hot. I was working manual labor. I ended up feeling like I was getting heat exhaustion and stuff. But I can tell you, I mean, with check drops, I feel like it's like legend for a lot of us, Scott. What was it like? I mean, could you compare that to like Halo?
I'd say it was like, okay, you know what it was very similar to was when I was using a lot of Anadrol, except for it wasn't sustained. It was like, I don't know, I could put it in like a regular drug context. It was like, okay, if you took like a drug that made you feel really good, you took a little bit all day long, there's some peaks in it maybe.
Yeah.
But the check drop was just that one peak.
Okay.
Except for really intense. So I would say it felt similar to a lot of Anadrol, but balled up into more of a concentrated thing. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what is similar to it is methyltren.
Yeah.
So they were kind of similar in the way, blood pressure went up, body heat went up, sweating profusely, very aggressive. For me, though, the blood pressure thing was just a total tap out because when you have a screaming headache, like the wraparound headache, I mean, you're not going to train.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll go on record as saying, and obviously the person asking the question, ultimately that decision is up to him.
Yeah.
I think that combination is reckless.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That's my opinion. Yeah, that's my opinion.
I'd agree.
Yeah, check drops were used in powerlifting back when I saw them is mainly just a pre-lift drug, like right before you went out to do your lifts to give you that extra, insanity laden, psychological strength boost. But I don't recall anybody ever really using them to use them outside of that.
Right. Bodybuilding, it kind of it hit and kind of had a quick trend, like, oh yeah, and then it faded very, very quickly. And that's probably why. It just wasn't, there are some drugs that work so quickly that really is the benefit. If I was a power lifter, that might be a different story. But to really try to sustain, I mean, you couldn't. I don't know how toxic that compound is in check drops, but I just know that I tried it 2 different times when I was younger, and it was brutal. And the reason I tried it was because I didn't have access to other things. It was more like a consolation.
Well, they're androgenic they're androgens. Like, they're not anabolic drugs. You know, they don't assist in building muscle. Yeah. They're like the hardest androgen. That's one of the hardest androgens there is. So it's not like you're using them to they're not helping you build muscle. I should say they can, because they can push you through like some heavy lifts and some insane training. But as far as like, say, testosterone or anything else that's got a lot of anabolic properties, it's not the same results to that end.
I got an interesting question here. This is something for the guys that are getting a little bit older now. Let's see. He says, love watching the content from Dusty and Jordan Peters, but at 38 years old, it's always a matter of time before training like that gets me an injury. It's an annoying cycle that I'm trying to break. I know that building strength is a primary driver of growth, but I'm looking to see what successful older guys like Meadows or Skip have changed to keep cranking. I'm not expecting to learn a new trick or add 10 pounds to a 38-year-old natural body with 24 years of experience, but just staying in the gym and making small gains is really awesome. I love the lifestyle like you, so I just want to learn and keep going. Man, I fucking love that question. I love the way he worded it too.
And there's a lot of, I mean, we don't even have enough time to go through the amount of options. And there are plenty of them. Number one, very clearly and quickly, is it's intensity. Intensity, and I've had this argument a million times with a bunch of different people, and everybody has their camp, and everybody has the things that they believe in. Overload, progressive overload is obviously a key to muscle. There's no getting around that. And it's probably the most efficient and the quickest way. The problem is just like this guy is saying, it doesn't go on forever. And what happens is, the older you get, not only are you tapping out your potential to increase strength, because there's just a point of no return at some point, but you're also inviting more, and it will happen. Even the guys who are made of rubber and they haven't had injuries yet, whether it be and I don't want anything to happen to Dusty, I don't want anything to happen to George, but the longer they train and they get those years behind them, they're probably going to have to adjust the way that they're approaching progressive overload as well. And there's 2 main things that I've done. Number one is intensity, and I do think that time under tension is not overlooked, but it doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. That's number one. Number two, like I said, coming back to intensity. Number two is you can still get into those 6 and 8 rep ranges if you're smart and your progression doesn't start. This is the best way to explain this. When you're strong, when you're young, and you're made of rubber, you can warm up, you can build up to your top set, and you can hit your top set of 6, 8, 9 reps, and you can, from there back off based on fatigue, or you can try to maintain that weight, and that's great, and you can stay in that rep range. When you get older and you become more vulnerable to injury and you're tapped out, or you're getting close to tapped out as far as strength progression, what I do, and have found incredibly helpful to minimize injury, is I go up and I hit and try to maintain. Let's say I'm going to do 3 working sets. I'm just using this as an example, as an arbitrary number to make my point. I'm going to do 3 working sets for dumbbell presses. I will work up, warm up, get up to my top set, and I'll hit 13 to 15. I'll stay there, and I might drop to 10 or 11. I'll stay there, and then that last set, because I'm trained to failure, may fall down into that 7, 8 rep range. I'm hitting the rep range, but I'm not hitting it on the first set where I'm more vulnerable. Right. I'm hitting it on the last set, because otherwise I'd have to use another 30, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever. And that's the difference. Could I grow more that way? Possibly. But when you have that risk, that's where you have to weigh it out. It's cost to benefit. Yeah. It's why Jay Cutler told Phil Heath early on, if you want to stay in this game for a long time, sure, you can press the 160s, but you don't need to. Clearly, that's a genetic, they're genetic freaks, and I get that. But the principle still applies to everybody. You still want to train heavy.
Yeah.
So if I bring this up, sometimes people go, oh, so you don't train heavy anymore, or they assume that's not fair. I'm still training heavy. I'm just not putting that strength progression as the number one priority.
Right.
And I've always said, when you do that, there are other variables that you don't control. If you're trying to beat your logbook and you had 8 reps and you need to go up another 10 pounds, you can still get 8 or 9 reps, but you may subconsciously increase that rep tempo speed.
Yeah.
Or you might stop at 3/4 of an inch shorter on your reps than you would otherwise. There are variables in there that aren't always controllable that you're going, and then you walk away from the set going, oh my God, I progressed. Well, maybe not. Time under tension is another issue too, and we just got into this discussion. Somebody brought this up on the board only like a week or a week and a half ago, and I don't remember who it was who said this. But if you're going, there really is no, I want to say it was John Meadows, but I don't know. So I don't want to be wrong. But if you're bench pressing 315 for 12 reps, or you slow it down and you bench press 315 for 8 reps, and they're both to failure, then, or let's just say that you have more time under tension even with the 8 reps because they're slower. Which one is more productive? You're training to failure. So if you train to failure, do you really need to focus as much on the strength? It's failure. Now, if you're training to failure at 30 reps versus 7, there may be a different stimulus there. But not from 8 to 12 reps.
Sure.
Time under tension is underrated. It's highly underrated because if you increase your strength progression by a couple reps, but you're only in that set for 30 seconds, then there's a lot of argument there. But the point is back to this question of just decreasing the vulnerability but continuing to progress. I've made some of my best gains, not the best gains. The best gains I made, I will admit, was DC training in the mid 2000s when I DC trained but I also had the most injuries, and Dante will scream at me if he heard me say that, because that implies that DC training caused the injuries, but it did. It caused, and I had more injuries because when you're dealing with failure training or rest pause, and this is at your peak, you're pushing your strength progression to its absolute max, that's when you're going to be the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So you have to weigh that out. I mean, let's just say you're growing and you're making great gains, but you have to take 6 weeks off every now and then because you have an injury. Is the end game any different than if you back off just a little bit and maintain? Because I've always said, and I do believe this, intensity doesn't cause injury. In my 2 things cause injury. Well, probably 3. Poor warming up for one. That would be the added third one. Poor biomechanics.
Okay.
And then just simply overloading the muscle with more weight that it can handle, and you have a tendon rupture. It happens. It just, that's typically when you're going to get injured. It's not the intensity. It's not going to, if you can go to failure and you can go past failure with forced reps, but you got to keep your mechanics. The only time you're really going to get injured in a situation like that is if it's just too fucking heavy or you break form. Your biomechanics or your mechanics break down.
Yeah.
Every rep the first rep should look like the last rep. Might be slower, but they should all look the same from the first to the last.
What do you think, Scott? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think so. If I look at all the injuries I've had, injuries people I know have had, for the most part, it's just like anything. The body gets wear and tear. So tendons, ligaments, joints, all that. So if I go back and look at, okay, I tore my labrum twice, I did this, whatever. It's usually on lifts that you're quote unquote good at and the ones you do a lot of. So if you repeat that same, even if your biomechanics are really good, I mean, look at anyone in any profession that has any type of physical activity. Over time, eventually, there's occurring injuries that happen to certain parts of the body because you're repeatedly using that angle, that motion, and your body wears and tears. So one thing I tell folks is when you start getting a little bit older and, maybe the injuries come around, one is you need to just say to yourself, hey, I've gotten hurt twice doing this lift.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to get away from that lift. and use a different lift that accomplishes it, that works that muscle, but maybe doesn't have that angle or that stress on those joints. And that can be one of the things I tell people is, hey, go to a free weight week, then followed by maybe a machine type week, or cables or whatever, and alter your lifts. And I got a buddy of mine. We're the same age, and he's got a really good physique. I mean, way better than I could ever hope for in my prime. And he uses a lot of that mentality where he's never doing the same kind of lifts. If he does chest, every once in a while he may flat bench, but he may do machines, but he may do dumbbells, and he alters the angles of the bench. It's like
very intuitive.
Buffet medley. Huh?
He's intuitive.
Yeah, he's very intuitive. You have to listen to your body. I mean, if you're doing lifts, if you're doing the same, let's say I can dumbbell press like tons of weight. It looks great in the gym.
Yeah.
Which I used to be able to dumbbell press like 150s for 8 reps. Well, guess what? That's not gonna work very good after a while. And I'm not saying like over a couple of weeks, but over the years, my joints, my rotator cuffs, my labrum, everything like that gets a lot of pressure on it, and you're going to have injuries. So you got to be smart and mix it up. And there's nothing wrong with going to failure, but maybe you should go to a lift you're not. I mean, I've always thought if you do lifts you're not that great at, even as long as the biomechanics are good, they generally are going to do more for you. In most cases. So you got to mix it up, and lifting's a very creature of habit thing. I'm sure a lot of people listening, a lot of people that lift, when it's like back day, they tend to take the same sequence of lifts all the time. Yeah. And sometimes you just got to go, hey, I'm going to go do chins today because I suck at them, but I never do them. Yeah. And maybe go do them, with the assisted machine or whatever. I know it looks terrible when you got half the stack pinned in to help you go up, but that's what you got to do sometimes, and that'll also help you, improve, and you won't get injured as fast.
I like that. It reminds me too, kind of what John Meadows had said when we had him on. He doesn't do like a set workout every time that he goes in the gym. He uses what he mixes it up, and he uses what he wants to use that day. He thinks about it. Not to mention too, with his recovery, he trains intuitively, as in his split is intuitive. When he goes in the gym, he says, okay, well, what's not feeling sore right now? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that's hard to explain to a new guy. Like we talked about that before. Like you can't just tell a new guy, just train intuitive, train what's not sore, But I think that over time you get to be, a guy like that. And a guy like the guy who asked this question, I mean, he's 38 years old. He's got a ton of experience. He's been doing this a long time. I'm sure that he can get more intuitive with it too. But I understand where he's coming from. Like it's like you hear these guys talk about what they're doing, and if you go and start reading a DC post, you're going to want to do progressive overload. You're going to want to do DC training by the end of that, but it's just a matter of figuring out, I guess what you can handle, huh?
Intuition's a funny thing too, because you'll know whether you have it or not if you think that you're going to start training intuitively, because if you truly have solid intuition with your training, much like John says, and it took me years and years to get to this point, but you will actually know what feels good when you run it over in your head and you think to yourself, nah, it just doesn't feel, today isn't a bench, today's a dumbbell press day. Yeah. And when you can, if you try to train intuitively and you're able to do it, string together a few, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and it works, then you have pretty good intuition and you understand how your body works and what you'll be able to do that day. If you can't hit it and you're wrong, your intuition ain't very good. Yeah. And it takes a long time. It's something that can't really be, you can define it, but you can't make a client or make someone else understand it. They won't know it until it's there, and it kind of proves itself over time. It's an odd thing. Someone like John, and I've been trained for 35 years, I have that. I go to the tanner every day before I go to the gym. It's my routine, and it allows my food to digest. It allows me to think about what I'm going to train while I'm in the tanner, and I will run it through my head. And very, very rarely am I wrong and get into a movement and have to drop it. And that's just from training for so long. I will know going in what's going to feel good that day.
Right on.
And how do you explain? You can't explain that to somebody. They have to they have to gain that experience and get that over time and figure out whether they're intuitive or not.
Andy Sass asks, steroids boost immune system to help battle the corona bug, or is that not a good idea to stay on?
No, it's actually the opposite. Wouldn't you agree, Scott?
It's Tren only. Take a gram of Tren a week, and you will never get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has more. He's a little bit late, about a half hour late.
Yeah, Scott. They were washing their hands.
There you go. But I see a typical steroid cycle as potentially lowering the immune system, not increasing it.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's why you take your growth.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's see here. We had a bunch more here. You know what? I'll go to an off-topic question just to kind of switch it up here. Let's see if I can find our off-topic questions. Oh, that's in the group. Here we go.
Cats.
I don't know if we had any cat questions. How about this one? Where the hell are they? Here we go. You can't. Nope, that's not it. I got caught here without having my questions ready.
Yeah, your pants are down.
I got caught with the pants down. I know, right?
Lame host award.
All right. I'll come back to that one then. I'll just go here because I have these ready.
Cricket.
Could you reverse the effects of all steroids on the brain? Appreciate the content you put out. I don't know what he means by this. Could you reverse the effects of all steroids on the brain? Does that make any sense?
Like block their effects or counter their effects?
I think counter. I think he's saying I'm being presumptive, but if he feels like, obviously it alters the brain chemistry to a certain degree.
Yeah.
So can you get to the point where if you stop using steroids that it doesn't mess with your brain chemistry, or your brain chemistry returns to what it was?
Yeah.
I think that one might be a little bit too not in my scope of kind of outside of my wheelhouse. I don't know that I can answer that with any,
I mean, I would say there's if certain in general, if certain drugs were to cause release of dopamine or serotonin or block the uptake to them, obviously there's drugs out there that accomplish those things. So I certainly wouldn't want to go playing with it. That's a Scott Stevenson question. You better ask him.
S2H, S2H or Texas Scott. I like both of those names. Texas Scott. He's talked about peptides with tags. Can he elaborate on this topic? What is a peptide with a tag versus an untagged peptide?
So a tag is when they're synthesized to repeat that process to synthesize more of that peptide. A tag is used. It's kind of like it's like a plate that has a number on it, like a license plate. And so when they're synthesizing peptides or anything, it doesn't have to be peptides. A tag is used so they can repeat that process quickly and produce more of that peptide. The problem with tags is that tags in most peptides interrupt the chain and don't give you the actual peptide amino acid chain that's in that peptide. So it's used as a repetitive process. Not in all of them is it used, but not in all of them does it inhibit the peptide's effectiveness. But in a lot of them it does, and most of them I would say that are. It also makes the cost of synthesizing the peptide much lower because the process is easily repeatable. I would say look at it from like what's the best way to do it? Okay, imagine you had a combination lock, okay, and you knew the combination. You could open the lock really fast. Then imagine that you had a combination lock and you didn't know the combination and you had to pick the lock or figure out the combination. It takes a lot longer to figure out. So the tag allows you to repeat the process quickly. Okay. And it's really a cost thing more than anything.
All right. For someone who has issues with, he says, for a super responder to AIs, meaning that he gets all sorts of nasty side effects, limp dick, sore joints, can he use tamoxifen instead?
tamoxifan's not an AI.
Right. But I get what he's saying. If there's any type of concern with, like, say, gyno, and he does the other thing, there's a lot of questions in there. Like, does he really have high estrogen to begin with? Has he seen blood work that indicates, or is he being presumptive, thinking, well, I take a cycle, then I have to take an anti-estrogen? And a lot of people do that. Yeah. A lot of people will say they do blood work, and they don't. I don't know. I don't know that that's this guy's case. All I'm saying is there are a lot of people who I have to push clients sometimes to get blood work, and they'll say they did, and when I ask to see it, then all of a sudden it's not there. So.
Sounds like my doctor.
Yeah, so it becomes a little bit of a guessing game, and that's difficult, especially when it's so easy to get blood work done. You know, a lot of people used to say, well, I don't want to have it done, you know, I don't want any medical record. Well, these days that's not an issue because there are a lot of options to get blood work done without your doctor, without your medical records having anything to do with your blood work. Yeah. So it's always a good idea in situations like that, because he could just be tanking his estrogen because maybe he doesn't. A lot of people can take lower dose cycles, and I'm not talking about TRT, but actual cycles, and not have their estrogen out of control. They take an anti-estrogen, an AI, and it ends up that they tank their estrogen, and that's where they're having issues when they probably don't need it to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, tamoxifan's a SERM, SE. It's a selective estrogen receptor modulator, so it blocks estrogen from binding to the receptor. It doesn't lower your estrogen. Or like Aromadex or Aromacin or aromatase inhibitors that actually inhibit the aromatase process, which creates estrogen. So, I mean, if your estrogen's not high and you wanted to block it from the receptor, that's not always the smartest thing either. If it's within range. So if you're within range, you could just go with neither one, and that would be probably the best thing.
And if you didn't have high estrogen levels and we're not sensitive to gyno, then you wouldn't need the Novadex anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, because he's asking about Novadex, you know, again, I'm being presumptive that he's concerned about gyno, but you know, it also comes back to the fact that some people just naturally assume, you know, or they get kind of scared. Well, I don't want gyno, so I'm going to take Novadex. But with any drug, I don't care. You know, Novadex is relatively an innocuous drug. It doesn't have horrible sides, and it's not like if you stay on it for a while that it's going to, you know, fuck your blood work up or anything like that. It's actually, honestly, it has some benefits. But you still don't want to take another drug without knowing that you need it. So it's better to find out if that's the case. I mean, if you're not sure about gyno, and I know people are going to cringe at this, but if you're not sure and you might be scared of gyno, you probably need to find out whether you are prone to gyno or not first. And that doesn't mean, I think people think, well, then I'm just going to wake up with bitch tits one morning, I'm never going to be able to get rid of them. That's not the case at all. So you get the symptoms of true symptoms, not, oh my God, I think I'm getting gyno. Oh, they look a little puffy. Well, you're just fat. You know when you have gyno. Yeah. You know when you're getting gyno. It's not a question. It's like, oh my God, I've got gyno. I'm getting gyno. I can feel like, oh shit, my nipples, I want to scratch the shit out of them, and you know they're itchy, and not like, oh, I just brushed my shirt against. I think it itches. I think I'm getting gyno, and that's typically the reaction from a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like you said at the beginning of all this, blood work really, because I mean, I don't know if he's super like having a super there are people that are going to have a stronger response to any drug than other people. So sure, there's going to be people that are going to have a stronger response to Arimidex than another guy. But that said, I wonder where his estrogen is to begin with, and I wonder where he's dosing it, because you know I might be fine on a given dose of steroids. Say I'm taking 500 test, I might be fine taking 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day. That might destroy him. 0.5 every other day. That might destroy him. But it doesn't mean there isn't a dose that he doesn't, you know, that wouldn't be beneficial. I don't know. You know, it's just a matter of finding, you know, how much you need. We do have a bunch more here. Let's see. We'll try to tackle a couple more. Well, if we have anything left over, we'll get them on the next show here. If you only had the option of one food for a cheat meal, a refeed, what food would that be? And he said that you can use variations of that food, meaning you could, like if you had pancakes, you could do red velvet or chocolate chip, stuff like that. How about you, Scott? We'll start with you on this one because we know Skip's probably already got a list all set up for this.
The cotton candy Bluebell ice cream.
No shit.
Yeah.
Yep. That's my vice. I'd be all over that. Matter of fact, I got a couple pints in the freezer right now.
Yeah.
Waiting on me. Yeah.
I never had that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's good.
How about you, Skip?
That would be it. Yeah.
How about you, Skip?
French toast.
French toast?
That's the number one. Yeah, gourmet French toast is right up there. I mean, I can't leave out sweet potato pancakes from Snooze, but because I don't live in Denver anymore, I haven't had them in over 2 years, and I'm fiending. But no, I'm a French toast guy. It's heavier, a little bit heavier in fat than a pancake typically, and it's just I'm a sweet guy when it comes to cheats or lows. Two reasons. Number one, they just taste better to me. But two, I want the benefit of the carbs.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I want as many carbs as I can get. And I just loaded for the first time in 7 weeks on this cut phase last Friday.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd feel kind of miserable. And I'm like, I'm going to be waterlogged, man. I should have just kept with my high carb day. But I had to push to it because the high carb days aren't doing it.
Yeah.
And god damn, I fucking hard as shit today in the gym and was flatter than I thought that I was. So it was quite beneficial. But I went for my French toast at Untoasted, one of my favorite. Well, my favorite easily. My favorite spot here in Fort Lauderdale. It's awesome.
Do you know Allison Henderman? She says, "Hey coach."
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey coach, drinking beer in Nashville with Jamie E. Sorry. Just throwing it out there.
That's Allie and Mike are my clients and friends that were just in West Palm, and they were the ones. He trains Jim, the Cardinals. They were the ones that hooked up that we were supposed to go to the game on Friday. They were at the game on Thursday, and she texted me and goes, "Oh, this is the last game. They're shutting it all down." I'm like, oh shit. So they decided to drive home instead of fly because of the flight and the virus. They're like, we're going to drive.
Yeah.
So they stopped in Nashville, and apparently he was there. She texted me the same thing a couple minutes ago, but I don't have my glasses, so I was trying to read it.
She added, he said maybe next time. So that must mean that maybe you'll get to do a pitch next time. Now, can you pitch a ball? Now, that was the other thing I was wondering. Or would you look good up there? Like, could you throw a respectable ball, or what was going to go down with that?
I know this sounds ballsy, and here's the thing, though. I know I still might have the opportunity, so in saying this, understand that I'm pretty confident.
Okay.
I haven't thrown a ball in 10, 12 years.
He's got to throw his shoulder out, Scott.
I guarantee you that I can hit him. Now, I'm not – first, you don't throw from the mound. You throw from in front of the mound.
Okay.
But I can guarantee you, left-handed, and I played baseball right. I was a catcher for – years.
Yeah.
And I had problems with my shoulder, so I taught myself to throw left-handed because I always throw football left-handed. I thought, well, I can, So I played left-handed. I played first base for a couple years at the end, and then I was done because I wanted to catch. Without catching, I didn't want to play baseball anymore. But I guarantee you, and she's probably laughing, listen to this, and Mike's like, no, he's full of shit. I can't wait. I will hit it, and it'll look just fine.
Damn. I would say, with the question, I would say, for me, you know what works best? It changes. Like early on, I might do good with just a burger, no fries, just a burger. And then as I get more depleted, I need more. So then I want a burger and fries. And then as I get more depleted, then it's like pancakes and an omelet, more fats with that. So for me, it's like my perfect cheat meal. It all depends where I'm at, how depleted I get, And I don't want to eat a bunch of burgers. Like, the amount of carbs I would need from burgers would be, for me, I just feel like it wouldn't settle well for me. I don't know.
Right. Yep.
Real off topic here. As of tomorrow, you won't be able to bodybuild for any reason, but you can do any sport you like. Which sport would you go for, S2H? Golf.
That's a sport? Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess it is, yeah.
Like bowling is a sport too.
Yeah, because you have to walk up, pick up the ball. Yeah.
Golf, if you don't ride in the cart, that could be very. It could be a lot of exercise, right? You got to walk to each hole.
In the cart, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be. I'd love to play professional golf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Skip?
There's no adrenaline there at all. There's nothing. Look, I was born and raised on baseball.
Oh,
the smell of leather, the smell of a glove, the smell of the baseball. Back when I was playing and coaching my kids, I would smell that fucking ball several times every day. It's baseball, but I'm 50. I can't fucking play
how about
baseball.
now? How about now, though?
Are we referring this to, like, currently?
Yeah, like you can't train tomorrow.
But are we talking about, like, currently at our current age and stuff, or
right?
just anything?
As of tomorrow, what are you going to do?
Well, if I was like 20, I'd say football.
Yeah, but we're talking right now.
Oh, no, golf.
Yeah.
Well, shit, then I might have to go with golf or badminton.
Chess.
Yeah. Yeah, because baseball is not gonna. No, it's not probably gonna work physically. And I say that because I could probably still. Yeah, I could take time and I could still field and throw, but the twisting to bat, that wouldn't go over very well. And I know this because about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, when I was coaching my son, we were at the batting cage, indoor batting cages, because he was with this fucking retardedly expensive baseball program. And I stepped in there, kicked off my sandals, and he thought it was funny because, I fouled off a couple, and then I started driving those bitches back through the hole. And he was like, he didn't want to say anything, he didn't want to, but he was like, so then his coach stood in there. We went back and forth. 3 days, dude. My back was so far, and my chest, because it had been so many years. So I was probably just, as I saw, I was squeezing the shit out of my fucking pecs and my back. And I was fucked up for like 3 days.
Oh, jeez.
You didn't rotate your hips?
No, probably not. I was just fucking powering it. Upper body powering it. Yep. Exactly.
Well, golf can jack up your back too, real quick.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I would think something like more like, I like the idea of golf because it's an independent sport. I could still find like some self challenge, but I'm thinking like I used to really like mountain biking a lot, and I could see myself getting into something like cycling and really pushing like some type of an endurance type, one on like independent lifetime sport, like cycling or running, maybe something like that. I don't know though. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision tomorrow.
I can't run. There's no fucking way I can run.
I'd have to start over. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't start out. It wouldn't be pretty. I'd run to the neighbor's house and then walk back. And then the next day I might run to 2 neighbors' house and walk back.
I think even if I was on fire and there was a fire extinguisher across the room, I'd probably just lie down and drop, stop, and roll, and that's about it, and hope I don't die. There's no fucking way I could get to that fire extinguisher. Someone steals my shit or steals my wife's purse, it'll take about 4 steps and I'll blow out both hamstrings.
You know who's really slow? I'm going to call him out here. Dave Kalick. We were at the Olympia this past year, and it was getting late, and I wanted to go over we were at Meet the Olympians, and we had to go all the way around to the other side. And I was like, dude, I haven't talked to Brandon Curry yet. I got to get over there. And I was like, we got to figure out where he's at. And there's all these people everywhere. And I was like, so I got to really hustle, man. He's like, okay, I'll go with you. And then he walks at like a 1/4 mile an hour. Exactly. He's like, I can't even, I got to lean back so everybody can see my hands. He's like this wide, and his legs are like tree trunks. He doesn't run. He has like one speed, and it's like Dave speed. That's it.
I can see.
Oh, we had that question about Decca NPP says, and I think he was a little misinformed. He said, since all you guys don't like Decca or NPP, what instead would you prefer for an off season to gain some mass? Do you want to clear up your stance on not liking NPP, Skip?
Yeah, I do. I like NPP. That's why. And I shouldn't have posted because we could have just, I could have.
You still can because nobody saw what you wrote.
I'm cool with NPP. I just don't like the Decca itself. I don't like compounds I don't like long ester testosterone. I always. I say cut. It's not really cut, but it sounds like a drug word, so I'll use it. But I always cut my testosterone, propin and cypionate. I always do that in almost, whether it's off season or if a cutting phase. I always cut it almost 50-50. I just prefer short. And I understand NPP isn't this terribly short ester, but it's still shorter than regular Decca, and I just have never done very well with Decca. I blow up on it. Now, it could be argued that, because you're leaner, you tend not to blow up on longer, I probably wouldn't blow up on Decca like I did before. I get that. But it just never was a compound that I just really felt great being on, so I just never came back to it. And when there was the option for NPP, it worked real good, and I stuck with that.
What about you, Scott?
Just take more tests.
More tests.
I mean, to answer this question, NPP and EQ. That's what I would thought.
NPP and Decca is just an ester thing. It's not really anything else. It's just, it just take more tests or take. I mean, you can take either one. It just, depends on the person. Yep. But it's really just an ester thing. It's not the drug. So, if you don't do well with long esters, then use short esters or blend them or whatever.
I am a fan of NPP as well. I found it works really well. You know what? Because I posted too, Skip, after him. I don't know why he said that we all didn't like Decca. I don't dislike Decca. In fact, I'm working with a couple guys now that I've always preferred EQ with a lot of guys. I found for myself personally, EQ was a much better compound for me. And I found a lot of guys to have success with that. In fact, I've even liked like an NPP EQ combo, like you had just mentioned. I feel like that's a real good one. I feel like I like that, the fast acting and the long acting together like that. The only thing I haven't liked Decca for is for guys that cycle and come off and recover, because I feel like Decca is a bitch to recover from. It takes so long to come back from it. It shuts people down, tends to shut people down harder. Maybe not everybody, but it happened in my situation. I've seen it happen in other situations. The metabolites are so long. I think that's why too. You have metabolites from Decca in your blood for a long, long time. So it might be 3 months down the road, and you might not be producing test as well, but that could be because you still have these metabolites floating around. So for all those reasons, I'm just not a huge fan for guys that come off. Guys that don't come off, guys that go like cruise between cycles, then I see that not as being as much of an issue,
Yeah. I think tests, and look, if I have to choose between it, because it's always tests, but if I have to choose like a kind of an off-season growth and I need two compounds, I would probably go with EQ over NPP. I'd go test and EQ.
Yeah.
But test EQ and NPP is a pretty good fucking combination. So.
Did you ever do trend, like EQ trend for an off season, or you ever use trend period for off season?
Yeah, I have, and I'm not a big fan. I've come to realize that I'm not a big fan of trend hex either. And again, really? That gets into ester issues. Yeah, I won't use it anymore. There are issues, things that I think that I'm not sure of, but I just don't like the compound. I won't go back to it. If I'm going to use Tren in the future, it'll be Tren acetate. And I don't like the shit because of I like what it does to me from a condition and a visual look.
Yeah.
But acetate is rough because of I hate that fucking cough. It is, and not even just a cough, but the anxiety of am I gonna get it as you're plunging?
Yeah.
Am I gonna get it? Oh shit, I'm gonna taste it. I fucking just hate that stuff. But when push comes to shove, god damn does it work. The Tren Hex, without getting too deep into it, I think it caused me some problems, some negatives. I didn't respond very well to it, and that was in hindsight. I didn't really notice it at the time, but I think that I've had some problems with it.
What do you think about trying in the off season, Scott?
Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, never had any problem with it, but. Parabolin was a little bit better than all of them, kind of middle of the road.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think you can take just more tests overall. And from, what it does for you, with anabolic, androgenic ratios and stuff for growing muscle, I think it works good. I mean, but like anything, sometimes people get a little bit in a rut and they go for, the shorter esters, maybe the acetate trend to kind of give them a kick. But I don't know. I mean, if somebody wants to do it, they can do it. It's just everybody, and some people handle it different,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's something that I'd put like right up there with like the must-have.
Right.
Here's my issue with more test. So when I first started cycling, first cycle I ever did was 15 milligrams of D-ball for 4 weeks. Blew up, And then after that, I did D-ball with test sip at like 400 milligrams of test, 25 of D-ball, and blew up again. Then I was told, well, you could do that without the D-ball. I tried it with just the test, And then after that, I did Test and Decca. I got shut down really hard from that cycle. So the following cycle, I went to that. I was like, you know what? So I ran like 500 Test, 400 Decca. What if I just took 500 Test with 400 more Test? You know, because there's the thought of like, well, it's not going to shut me down like the Decca did, right? I got the worst side effects from that cycle, like acne wise and stuff. It was terrible. My back just blew up from acne on that cycle. And so I think the reason that I like a different compound is that you can increase the milligrams without you could use like a milder compound. You know what I mean? Like with more tests, that's where I went. But with adding Decca to it, I didn't have that. Or in the future, adding EQ, didn't have that.
Well, that's where you can take different esters to test.
Yeah.
Equal that same amount, but mix them up.
I didn't do that. Yeah.
Just some type of blend. Yeah, I think that's where you wouldn't get as bad side effects. So let's say you were going to go from 500 to 700, and you were already on 500 milligrams of cypionate. You could add in 200 milligrams of propionate. Okay. Or isopropionate or whatever, and then I think you'd have better, because it would keep your blood levels more stable.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, I'm guessing, but I think because you took that early on.
Yeah.
You know, you probably could tolerate 800 milligrams of test better now without
absolutely
that same level of size that you had then. It was probably more of a shock to your system, like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
The other thing with breaking out, and I have found this a large majority of the time, is you typically only break out when blood levels are climbing or decreasing. So had you gotten to a certain blood level, you probably
was so I mean, because I've gotten that too. Like I found with it with Tren, if I was more sensitive early on, and when I went from every other day to every day, then it's like, ooh, that leveled everything out, you know? Or split the D ball up more often. Don't just take it once a day. That leveled it out. With this, I think it was just like, for me, too much androgen at the time, at the time, because it was just fierce. Because I thought, yeah, you know, I'll just keep riding. It just got worse and worse. It got to the point where I'd take a shot and then everything would just like inflame and turn red the next day. It was bad. But you're right, man. Totally. Today I could do the same thing and there'd be like, probably wouldn't even need an AI, you know? Anyway, I think we're about wrapped up here. Is there anything else we need to talk about? Any Corona stuff we didn't cover?
No.
We covered the bases there. Hopefully,
we should have wore masks for the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Ron Partlow did that.
Infected me through the show.
Yeah.
We hazmat suits.
So Scott Stevenson.
If Skip got me sick, he'd feel bad.
Scott's traveling all around the country right now. He has an RV it's one of those.
Scott Stevenson.
Yeah, it's one of those campers that you put in the back of a pickup truck, but it's huge. And he like built this. He has this frame that holds it all together, and the frame I can't even explain it. And let me put it this way too. He like outfitted the pickup truck with all sorts of extra gauges and stuff. And he showed it to us. We went to, there was this like meet and greet at Bullfrog Nutrition in Columbus where it was cool. We got to hang out with John and with Fuad and Paul, his training partner, and then everybody else who was there. There was like I don't even know, but there was like a bunch of other people in fitness there. Anyway, after we were done with that, I wanted to get a tour of Scott's camper. He's like done so, he has like all these different lights that he's connected to it all over the place, and if you flip this switch, this thing turns on. And we walked over to it and he opens up the front door, and Victoria turned to me and she was like, oh my God, this is like the Back to the Future car. Like that's what it looked like. There's wires everywhere and there's like switches all over here, and there's all these different like lights and gauges on the and cameras. Like, and then I turn on this camera and it shows me the inside of the truck. I can watch the dogs, and I turn on this camera and it shows me behind. Like everything. It was crazy. It's like his project.
Can you imagine me at like the KOA campground? He pulls up next to you and you're like, oh God, who's next to, it's like the red mohawk comes out. Yep. And the old grandma and grandpa are in their big RV, and they're like, that's an interesting looking fellow there. Yeah.
Oh, he used to have, so this is like his 6th camper now. He used to have what they call a toy hauler. It's like, the camper that you could put vehicles in, So get this. He turned that into his camper. So he had like a sleeping area in there and everything and a stove and all that, I believe. He also, in the back of it, had, get this, he had his full rack and like 600 pounds of weight.
Yep.
So he would be squatting at like 7 a.m. in a campground with that back door hanging open. So imagine you're like walking around with your morning coffee and you're like, hey, hon, let's stroll around the campground with our coffees. And there's Scott Stevenson going ass to grass.
Yeah, look at the psycho over there with the red mohawk. What the fuck is he doing?
And he's not just like getting a pump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I used to have one of those campers in my truck. It was hydraulic. And so you have this little controller that comes out on a cable.
Yes.
And I would hit it, and the thing would expand out the sides, and these poles would come down.
That's what he has.
Expand out the back. And actually, from the outside looking at it, you're like, it doesn't look that big, but when you get in it, it had like a little kitchen, it had a bathroom.
Yeah.
It had everything. It had 2 beds. It had like a little, on the front, like towards the front of the truck, it had like a little table, a dining room table with like a half moon like couch around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. I had a satellite dish and everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has it all tricked out. He has the refrigerator in there, and then he has like another refrigerator in there, like an electric cooler of some type, and then he has another cooler that's like up front in the truck. So all his meals and stuff are all refrigerated up there. It all runs on like electric, or it runs off the generator, or it runs off of these solar panels. The whole top of his truck is solar panels now. It really is something else, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stay in a hotel.
Yeah.
Call me weird. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to try to get him to tell me a little bit about that when we get him on the next show. Let's get out of here then, in that case. For another episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear with S2H, Skip Hill, I'm Scott McNally. Guys, we'll see you next time.
Out.